Welcome to the Athletes in Motion podcast, From Race to Recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Kenny, how are you?
I am fantastic as well. This is going to be a fun episode today because our guest today is one Tom Riegel.
Well, first we're going to talk about the fact that we've been missing for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Because life got in the way.
Yes.
We got crazy busy.
Yes.
Kenny is now the man in charge at Lifetime here in Franklin. So the general manager. So Kenny's got a real gig.
I got a real job now.
It's nice. So that's good. We're super excited for him. So trying to get through all of that, plus life in general for me got crazy as well with racing and all of that. We're going to talk a little bit about. But yeah, we're here. We're back. We're got
back.
More stuff coming
Sorry about
up.
that.
So yeah.
Took a little pause, had to get a
Thanks.
job. So,
thanks for still checking in.
and speaking of which, so if you are checking in, make sure you like and subscribe down below.
Yes, please do.
That always helps our algorithm and also just gives you an opportunity to know when our new shows are coming up.
Yep.
So,
especially if we take another break.
Yes. But excited to talk about this today because you not only do you coach folks in bike fit and just basically live the triathlon lifestyle, but you also race as well. And you had your Ironman Lake Placid this year. That was your race.
That was my race. That was my A race.
Yeah. And so want to talk about your race, want to talk about sort of how you're prepped for it. But also you have another kind of interesting thing in the fact that you've got the label of coach above your head.
Yeah.
So how, today we're going to try to talk about sort of how that additional pressure, what that thought is as you're trying to coach other people, coach yourself, and those expectations that you put on yourself or those feelings that, like, hey, what's my coach doing? Why can't he figure this out how to do it?
It turns out we're terrible athletes. We're horrible athletes to coach.
Oh, that's not true.
Especially when we're coaching ourselves. It gets really bad. So that when you hate your coach, when you're out there and you get that bad workout and you hate your coach and you're just kind of angry at him, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, he's suffering the same fate too.
Yeah, we go through that.
So what made you decide to do Lake Placid this year?
So I had done Lake Placid as my very first Ironman back in 2014. Mm-hmm. So it's been a few years. 2014. 2010. Yeah, 2010, because it was 14 years ago. So back in 2010, that was my very first Ironman. I had been in the sport for a few years already. I kind of worked my way up to that. So that's always a special one. I grew up in New York, went to school in upstate New York, spent some time in the Adirondacks, love it up there. Yeah. That's why I chose that as my first one. Had some family and some friends come over. So decided to go back and do that again. Mm-hmm. I don't know, for some reason I felt like it was time to go back and try to beat that time. I wanted to see, as the years go past, it was like, I better go now because I'm probably not going to be faster or better than I was. So once again, family and friends came. We rented a nice place, and it was go back. Let's see what I can do with that. So I focused a lot on short course the whole year, and got my training in and everything. But that was our main focus was to get up there and have some fun and see what I could do.
Yeah, and the interesting part about that, to your point, when you're younger in your journey, your career, right? You like your first couple, there's this sort of sine wave that happens, right? You're not very good at the beginning. You're kind of fumbling around, but you did great and you had fun and you got the bug. And then you sort of increase your skill level and you decrease your speed and those kind of things. And then you start getting older, to your point. And you're like, well, I've got a lot of knowledge now built up. I have a lot of education built up. And I can tell probably a year ago, 2 years ago, you were starting to get that itch, right? You were like, hey, I got some juice in the tank, right?
There's still a little bit there.
I'm can I beat what 14-year-old
I'm way smarter than I was. 14
right.
years ago, especially in this sport. Maybe not anything else, but in this sport for sure.
Okay.
That was the key. And I knew I was going to have to be really smart on the race.
Yeah. And so your goal was was it to get the overall time? Was it get to split times?
There's a couple different pieces to it. So overall it was to finish. That's always my goal is always to finish. So the second goal was to beat my time. My time was 13:41, so 13 hours 41 minutes. Mm-hmm. So to beat the overall time would have been key. And then of course I wanted to see each component, swim, bike, and run, and transitions. I wanted to see if I could actually be faster on those. Yeah. So the last 2 years I had focused, I was coming back from injury. I think we've talked about this on another podcast, and I focused a lot on running.
Yeah.
I did mainly running. I did minimal cycling, especially for me, 1,000 miles maybe a year.
That's not a lot, just in comparative terms, folks. That's
normally it's 5. So it was 1. So I knew starting back November when I really got training for this, that was my weak link. And I didn't know how much of that I was going to get back.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't always come back. So I had really worked on a plan to build up my, we look at watts per kilogram for power output. I never quite got back to where I was a couple of years ago. I just didn't have enough time. I had 9 months. I didn't have enough time to get there.
Isn't it funny? 9 months isn't enough time.
9 months isn't enough time to pull that back.
And that's the thing. Full Ironmans are no joke, right? You don't hide from a full Ironman.
No.
If you sort of phoned it in on a certain part of it, it's going to reveal itself during the middle of the race, and not just itself in that particular, like you said, if you just kind of, not that you did this, but if you phoned it in on the bike, you're not only going to suffer on the bike, but that run's going to be just a nightmare. So your bike was, but your bike was good. It just wasn't where you wanted it to be, right?
Yeah, it was strong. I knew where it was. So this time around, I was training with power, which I didn't do back then in 2010 because most of those power meters weren't around. It wasn't as much as prevalent as it is now, and easy to do. So I knew I had to train. Look, I had to train smarter. Right, I had to work. So I knew a week out from the race is where I know exactly what numbers I can hit. There's no magical answer to doing better than that. I knew what my targets were. I knew if I had the absolute perfect day, everything went to plan, if not better, I would get 12 and a half hours. That was probably the best I could do. With swim, the bike, the run, all of those pieces all falling together.
Is that an important thing? That's an interesting way to look at it, right? Which is, know what your realm is. Like, you're not going to bust it in 9.5. You're not going to bust it in 11.
It's realistic. It's the only way to set realistic goals when you're going into races like this, because you're never no one's going to step up and all of a sudden, come to the forefront. If you're running a 4.5 hour marathon, you're not automatically going to be able to run a 3.5 hour marathon. It's not going to happen. It's whatever you're doing in your training is what it is. So it's always interesting when someone starts talking about what they want to hit. You can have goals. And say, I want to go sub 12 on my Ironman. But as the weeks go by and as you get closer, if you're not training at those levels, you're not going to hit it.
It's not the magic of the race that's going to get you.
A magical tailwind that's going to come, and all of a sudden you're 2 miles an hour faster on the bike. It's just not going to happen. So add to that they had changed the course a little bit, which they always do, right? So they added this little segment in it that probably added close to 1,000 feet of gain. So we're at close to 7,500 feet of elevation just on the bike.
So you're going to earn that.
It's like, okay, realistically, that is critical, especially in this race, for the run. Are you going to blow up completely trying to hammer the bike to the numbers that you did on the flatlands to not have anything available in the tank for the run?
So when you decided to do this and you said it out loud to your clients, do you have a concern to that point? Are you trying to set a precedence? Because everyone's going to look at you, right? Coach is racing this one. Coach is racing this one. So, that kind of thing. How do you set up that expectation level? Or do you feel like you have to?
It was interesting because I'm up to this point, like being out here, I've been out here for about 4 years now, right? I usually don't share much in my training and my racing. Everyone will find out about it afterwards, right? I'll post up about it. Hey, I'm at the race or something like that. And there's not that much. This one was kind of odd because the amount of people that were watching, and even that I didn't know were watching that I talked to afterwards, it's kind of wild. It's like people that I just met once. They were like, I followed you. I watched you on the video finish. And I'm going like, wow, okay. No, that's amazing. I mean, that blows my mind. So I have a Strava account. I have followers. I've never posted anything on it, right? I don't share my workouts because I don't think they relate to how your workouts would be. And I know some people like to do that. That's fine. But I don't want you to compare about what I'm doing because what I'm doing works for me, not for you. It's different that way. So I'm very I'm very cautious and shy when I share training and all this. So it was kind of weird when I started talking to people about it and people got excited and they remembered. So as it was getting closer to race day, they were just kind of like, oh, you got your race coming up. We're so excited. We're going to be following you. And I'm like, not used to that.
Yeah.
So that was a new realm for me to go into. So I had to work really hard about not focusing on that.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to my race plan.
Nice.
Because I figured if they're watching, the one thing that I've gotten really good over the years is setting up a good race plan.
Yeah.
It's worked for the 100 milers. It's worked for everything. All of this sets up. And that's the thing that I said, well, I have to focus on that because if I don't have a good race plan and I blow up, then that's going to look worse than if I just go slow.
Yeah.
If that's my race plan.
Yeah, or if you're trying to hit a time and you don't hit it. Like, if you don't hit it, there's 100 reasons why you can't hit a time.
Yeah.
But if it's because you fundamentally broke your own rule, it's like,
And that's the part that I was like, okay, so that's what and I had to self-talk myself a few times on it. I had to sit back and go, no. Let's focus. Come, bring this back. This is the plan. Mm-hmm. We have to go with the plan. The plan is what I have to do. And funny thing was that my wife Wendy were up at the house. Our friends had come in. They went off and did some stuff, and I checked the bike in, and I did whatever. And then I'm sitting there watching the tour on the couch. Like, I'd set everything up, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why? What's going on?" She goes, "You're really calm." I'm like, "Well, I've done this before.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what I needed. My transition bags have very little in them.
Yeah.
Because I just need, I need shoes and a helmet. My transitions have gotten, I don't bring extra stuff. I had my calorie count laid out. I had exactly what I was going to do. It was all laid out. It was all done. Yeah. I repacked the bags a couple times and then took them, checked in, took the bike, and then just watched TV.
Yeah, it's like the first race you bring a Santa Claus bag, right? Well, just in case I need arm warmers.
Yeah.
So what if I need gloves? What if I have an extra pair of socks?
Yeah. I know I don't need all of that now.
Yeah,
I've
good.
Got all of that covered. And I'm confident that if it doesn't go right, I'll be okay. I'll be able to figure it out.
Sure. So race day shows up, the weather hopefully was cooperating for you.
Yeah, the weather was great. It was super hot the 2 weeks before, just like it was just about everywhere in the country, right? Water temperature got up to 78 degrees, which it never does up there. So it was almost not wetsuit legal. It dropped down to 75 that morning. Okay. So it got down so we were wetsuit legal.
Nice.
Great. Which was fine. I was prepared to go either way. It was fine. So I seated myself, and this is a bone I have to pick with everybody that seats themselves improperly in these races. Because this was a major problem for this. This is 2 loops. Everyone stacked up. I got in the 1 hour 10 minute to 1 hour 20 minute zone because that's what I can do.
Yeah,
I know I can do that. Yeah. My fastest swim was a 105. Yeah, I usually sit in the 110 range. So I walked myself up, which was not easy to do, kind of worked, squirmed my way, ended up at the front of that group. Yeah. So I'm at the front of the 110 group. The 1 hour to 110 is in front of us, and then the sub 1 hour is up in front of them.
Show us.
And the pros, whatever, up there. They've got us lined up, so 5 at a time, every 5 seconds.
Yep.
That should work fine.
Yep.
It's 2 loops. You shouldn't run into traffic until the second loop. I swam over probably 50 people in the first 200 yards. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they were swimming sideways. They were going all different directions. I got kicked in the throat twice.
Wow.
I got kicked in the chest. I got punched in the head. Yeah. It was like people weren't even caring. If they touched you, they didn't back off. They just hit you harder. Oh, and it was like everyone just it was mayhem. Yeah. And that first 1,000 yards was brutal, and it didn't get any better the rest of the time. So
those 2 loopers, it's interesting, and I think that's the part that you can't practice very well. Yeah, is that right? Which is you've done open water, you've done your pool swims, you're feeling healthy, you're feeling good. Yeah, getting smacked in the throat. I don't think as a coach you practice smacking your clients in the throat.
No, I try not to do that. They frown upon that.
You should incorporate that.
I've learned a couple new tricks that we're going to use in the open water test coming up because
hit them with a noodle and see.
It was brutal, and around the top part of the course, I got hit with a fist. with a fist. This was not a hand. This was a fist right in the hamstring that just locked the hamstring up. I was sinking. It went so dead leg on me that I was sinking around and had to come back from that. Had that happen with the other leg on the second loop. And so it was brutal. I come out of the swim, survived that at a 119. Right. Okay. I was still in my 110 to 120 range. Yeah. Right? So not spectacular, but faster than my first triathlon, my first Ironman.
There
swim.
You go.
So I was still ahead of the game at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were doing your plan that you thought you were doing your plan? Get on the bike, same thing.
I had a great T1. I had a great T1. I was really happy with that. Flew out of there, got on the bike. Mm-hmm. The bike is a quick downhill to start.
Nice.
And then it goes uphill. So the first 12 miles, you're 1,000 feet of climbing. So it's fast, very steep descent right out of transition with some hard turns. Mm-hmm. And some people were flying down that thing and were almost wrecking. Yeah. So then it was just getting into a mode. I knew my power numbers. I had my watts up above, and I was staying just below the power numbers for the first loop. About 35 miles in. So I cramped on the swim. Mm-hmm. I cramped, my abs were cramping in transition, and then I cramped on the bike about 35 miles in.
Fun.
So that was the part where I was like, okay, let's take a look at this. So I started taking in more electrolyte mix, the Mortal Hydration that they have, which was fine. I didn't have any issues with it. I had trained with it before and tested it out, and got through that, was still a little nervous about that. So wasn't feeling 100% on the bike. So on the second loop, I backed off a little bit more. So I went under my power numbers. I knew I couldn't go over because I knew if I went over at this point, I was screwed.
So that's 14 years of experience on that one, right? So 14 year ago, you would have done
pushed,
right?
Just kept pushing.
Yeah.
And did.
Well, yeah. And so I think that's the difference between you can be older.
Yeah.
You can have a plan. It's better to be sort of older and have a plan than it is young, unless you can get away with it, which rarely you can.
Yeah.
But that's the difference, right? Yeah. Is that, okay, I know now that if I push it, it's not only going to affect my bike, but it's going to affect that run moving forward. Yeah. So did you stick to your nutrition plan, you think?
I had to adjust the nutrition plan because I tried to take in more electrolytes.
Okay.
I tried to take in a lot more Mortal Hydration because I was trying to stay ahead of what I thought was cramping from that. Coming through. So that switched me a little bit. So my nutrition was very liquid to begin with Tailwind.
Yeah.
And a couple of bottles of Tailwind. I was set to take in between 90 and 100 grams of carbohydrates per hour. Okay. I brought enough whole real food with me as well because I wanted to be prepared for that as well. Ended up switching more to real food than I did because the Mortal Hydration just filled me up.
Yep.
It just liquid. I had to stop and take a long pee break on the second loop of the bike. Everything sat within the numbers. I said, great, if I have the perfect day, I'm really going to be a 6:15 on the bike. If it goes the way I think it's going to go, it's going to be 6.5 hours on the bike. I ended up being 6:40 something on the bike, 6:48 or something like that. It was like, as long as I was sub 7 hours, I was happy with the climbing because I was really focused on the run. Yeah. Like I've been working on the run. The run was good. The run was solid.
It's like you're ready to go.
I was going to come out and have a really solid run. Had a killer T2, 4 minutes.
Good.
Just racked it. Racked the bike, ran through, grabbed my stuff. I was out on the run. It was
That's
great.
awesome.
And then the shit hit the fan.
What hit the fan?
Sort of. So the run is downhill, slightly downhill. You hit an intersection, and then it's a hard right, and then it's a really steep downhill. I was trying to slow myself down, and my whole body cramped. I mean, everything. I think my eyelids cramped. Everything went into lock mode, and I was still trying to test myself. I was still trying to slow my pace down because I didn't want to come out of the box 8:30. Yeah. I always coach everybody. I tell you all to take it nice and easy, go nice and slow that first mile, that first 2 miles, get into it. So I was trying to go along. That was my plan. And then I realized that I had two options. I could send it and just go because holding myself back was making things worse. Yeah. So I'd either land flat on my face and be carted off or somehow I'd make it to the bottom of the hill, the long hill, and then I would sort things out. Walk, figure it out. I couldn't stop myself to walk. Like literally I could not slow myself down to walk because everything just went absolutely nuts and bonkers. had similar issues in the past, right?
Yeah.
Had occasionally would get something like that, and not usually a full body.
Yeah.
So that was kind of weird. So I sent it. I just absolutely sent it. I wish somebody had video. If somebody has video of me going down that first hill, it's got to look the goofiest thing. Arms all over the place, just the body, just me screaming. Like, it was just all the way down to the bottom. When I got to the bottom, things loosened up a little bit.
They're looking for the hornet's nest behind you, or with a bear that's chasing you.
Crazy. It was crazy. So so I made it to the bottom of the long hill, and they changed the course on the run as well. Mm-hmm. Kept it more in town, added a little more elevation. So I think total elevation on it was close to 1,000 feet, if not a little over. So for a marathon, you've got 2 loops. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hills. You're going down, you're flat, and then you're coming all the way back into town. There's some work to do. So I was just trying to sort things out, but I was able to manage my paces. I was sitting in the mid 9:15, 9:20 per mile, which is what I was planning on doing. It was going along, but I just didn't feel right. I didn't feel right. I felt off. I felt like I was about to cramp any minute. Mm-hmm. So I managed to push through that till mile 11. And then mile 11, I said I had to stop and do something. Like I was drinking lots more mortal hydration. I thought like electrolytes. It turns out I needed salt. I needed more, and there's not enough electrolyte. There's not enough salt in the Morton. At least the Morton that they were, or mortal hydration that they were using. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I get it. They can't give that much salt to everybody. That's no big deal. The one thing I didn't bring with me was little salt tabs. Right? Should have known better on that. I usually have some salt tabs in some place. But so I slowed down, walked, stopped, ate a lot of chips and stuff for the first. We have that little. For probably 3 or 4 miles after that. I made sure I dropped down to, I think one of them was a 15-minute mile. And then I was down in the 11s and 12s for a little bit. And
Is that the part at what point when you're doing that, was there a coaching like, oh my gosh, the people are watching me? I mean, is it all external or do you always just remove that from it? It doesn't matter.
When I'm in the race, I'm good with that. There was a few times I was thinking about that on the bike. But I was able to put that away because I have that's what I love about racing. Like I can have that singular focus finally. Normally I'm ADD, I'm all over the place. I'm just like thinking about too many things, as you can tell right now, right? But for the race, I'm locked in. I'm going, okay, I just need to. Just keep going. So for me, it's constantly checking how my body feels. Like, okay, my feet, okay, good. Ankles, knees, everything feels good. That's my constant run through while I'm running. Is to make sure it was all good. And then I was sitting here trying to figure out exactly what was wrong, right? I was trying to go, okay, this isn't working. Let me try plan B. Let me try. And then it was just like, you know what? I'm going to stop and eat a whole thing of potato chips. Like salt. I need salt. I need salt. And literally I was stopping to make sure that I ate all of the chips. And then from there it was drink some Coke, which I was going to be at the second half of the race anyway.
It's a magical elixir.
About 3 or 4 miles later, it was like, I could feel my whole body just coming back to life again. So then it was like, so I managed some 10 and a half to 11 and a half minute miles as I was going through because I was walking parts and going up the hills. And then everything came back to life. So the last 6 miles, I'm flying. I'm doing 8:30s, and I'm just like, this is where I could have been had I kind of managed this a little bit quicker, but I'm still good with it.
Yeah, and it goes back to that experience, right? It goes knowing that, okay, if my body is doing this, then I must do this, right? And you're not going to get it, 100% of the time. But you know, like, oh, it's salt. Okay, that's, okay, get the salt in there. And then all of a sudden, and with the Coke, it just sort of breaks the dam, and all of a sudden you're...
popped it on, right?
So I think sometimes I know... I have friends and colleagues that are watching the Ironman tracker, right? And they're seeing your split times. And I know when I'm walking, I'm like, oh, they're going to look at the split times and go, what happened, right? And so when you're on the opposite end, you just don't know. You're like, oh, he's doing great. Oh, he's doing great. Uh-oh. And then all of a sudden, okay, he's back, So it's
when I'm watching as a coach now and I know the course, it's like going along. It's like, oh, he's flying. He's doing great. He's doing great. Oh, he hit the hilly section. And then, okay, here he is. He's good. He's doing good.
Came out a little hot. Maybe she shouldn't have come out hot. Now she's coming back.
So, slow down. That type of thing. So
as as other coaches, right? If you're coaching coaches, the idea of having to perform. By the way, what was your time when you got done with your run?
13:03.
Well, there you go. So
I
by
hit
3 minutes. You missed
by 3 minutes. That was my extra pee break at mile 11 because it was more than 3 minutes. I beat my swim time my bike time, my 2 transitions were faster. My run was slower.
Is that ironic or what?
It's hilarious.
Oh, the one thing you wanted to do.
Because I had GI issues. I had GI issues on the run on the first one.
Yeah.
And that's when I discovered that soy and I don't mix.
Oh, jeez.
But I still had a faster run back then. I was young. I was younger. I was younger.
Younger legs.
And that's my only disappointment was the fact that I really wanted to nail the run.
Yeah.
And I did good on the run. I'm not upset with it. It was within what I thought I could do. Right. It's still within that window of the plan.
Yeah.
Was still there.
And you were staring at 12 too, right? The number 12.
Just like that would have been so sweet. And the thing was, the last half of the run, I wasn't looking at my watch. I wasn't worried. I was just trying to get to the finish. I was just trying to sort myself out and go. Yeah. And I don't think I could have run any faster. Yeah. Really, I couldn't have, because I was running fast. If I was like sort of sloshing along on that last bit and like took it easy and was just like, I'll just get to the finish, I'll be fine. Yeah. And then coming in with a 13:03, I would have been pissed.
Yeah. I think there's I preach this a lot, right? You want to, it's not a time issue or it's not a quality issue. You just want to reach your capability.
Yeah.
Right. If you felt like I didn't give my capability, like I didn't live up to the capability that I could have done on that race, that's what bugs the crap out of you.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So the back half of the race, you were like, oh, I'm running to the speed I should be running. Yeah. You're not thrilled because of GI issues and other issues up front or because, the salt didn't kick in, but you lived up to the capability that you were looking to do, right?
Yep.
And that's when it becomes
fit
satisfying.
Within the number. Yeah. Like I said, if I had nailed everything perfect and all the conditions were great, it would have been 12 and a half hours. Yeah. The worst case it was going to be was 13 and a half hours. Yeah. And to come in right at 13 hours is like, what's there? I did what I knew I was capable of doing. I was very satisfied with that. I was exhausted at the end. I mean, I put everything out.
And that's great, right? Because again, if weather hits, terrible weather, or when I did California, the wind was ridiculous. So you just kind of adjust. You're like, that's outside of my capability.
Change of course,
right?
Any of that stuff.
Because now you're living to whatever capability you can within that weather thing. And that's what makes these races so fun. Yeah. The mechanical certainly pisses you off, right? Because it's like
that's outside of your control.
Yeah, it's outside of control, but it's like it just robbed me of finding my capability, right? Yeah. It's those ones where you screw up, you do a dumb mistake, you tell yourself, I'm going to go by this plan, I'm going to eat this kind of stuff.
It's when you start racing the other people on the course.
Yeah, true.
And you're just like, well, that guy's up front and he's really flying up that hill. I'm just going to go catch him.
Yeah, and worse for me is I don't think that person should be in front of me. That guy shouldn't be in front of me. I'm going to go get him. No.
Exactly. No. Yeah, there's no way
that guy should not be in front of me.
Yeah.
That guy.
You can have a healthy dose of that to keep yourself going. Yeah. But you have to, once again, you have to look at some metrics and say, I'm really outside my zone on this one. And I think that's a big thing with racing with power. I think that's where a benefit comes in, if you can stay to those numbers and look at that.
Yeah, and the hard part for me, to your point, is you settle in on a group of people, right? Yeah. These races are long enough where you just have this sort of cadre of a dozen people.
You're all around the same effort,
and suddenly you're doing the same effort, and then you feel a little bit like you're fading a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're still not, they're not fading, and then that's when and that's when you're like, I don't want to break the rubber band on this thing, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I gotta put my pride away and go ahead. That person's strong today. Let them do that.
I'll catch them on the run.
Yeah, I'll catch them on the run. Famous last words.
Yeah.
So as other coaches that are, what would you tell the coaches about that? Because I know you guys talk about that, right? It's like, I don't know if I should be public about my races. I don't know the expectations of my clients. Is there a myth?
We get mixed messages. I get more mixed messages from people who try to help coaches. So there's consultants and people out there that help us coaches. So if we needed some help, some mentoring and some other stuff, and half of them are like, you need to put up good results, and the other half of them are, you don't need to worry about the results. Yeah. I tend to think that it's not about the results. Yeah. But that being said, that's the thing that pops to our heads, is that's the thing that we worry about the most, is that we want to put up good results, because we see comments where people put up is like, wow, he's practicing what he preaches. Yeah. From someone that doesn't even know you. Yeah. All right, he's putting this up there, and just because they saw the result that you did. Yeah. And it's like, oh, so there is that out there. Yeah. I don't know how much you put weight into it on whether it's 60% or 20% of what's out there, but it's there. And I think that's something we just need to not focus on and not dwell on it. Yeah. And just, once again, do the best we can. But it's something that it's out there, it's prevalent, and it pops into our heads every once in a while.
I think to your point, well, and also there's a difference between 35 and 55, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a 35-year-old racer and coach, right, you have a better capability to do something. But I think you hit it earlier. I think it's around what is your game plan, and if you preach a particular game plan or you preach a particular way of approaching a race, and then you yourself don't do that, I think it's that gap that causes people to be concerned. It's like, I stuck to my plan. Things, people know things go awry. They know that, nutrition. I was trying, I had a nutrition plan.
Mm-hmm. That's gonna disappear. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's
the fun part of the race. Is it's never a straightforward thing.
Yeah. So I think more coaches should focus on that. To your point, it's not a time thing. It's hey, I stuck to the same plan I gave you is the same plan I used for myself.
Yeah.
The results were what I was hoping it to be.
Yeah.
You did beat your time for 14 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's fantastic, right? I mean, 14 years ago you were racing, and now 14 years later
with a
you
change
bested
of
your
course.
time. Yeah.
It's hard to judge year from year because it changes in course, changing in temperature, weather, all of that stuff goes into it. Yeah. I wonder, and I actually played with this in my mind. Do I share my race plan before I go and race?
That's interesting.
To say, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. This is the time I think I can hit for the swim. I'm going to try to do this for all of that. I give that to Wendy because she's watching, so she knows when things go awry or when things are good. But I didn't share that with anybody else, and I did think about it.
That would be an interesting thing to do, to your point. Because I think as a client, if you guys are looking for coaches, I think pure time, it may not be your coach could be a phenom. Yeah. Right. And but if they stuck to their plan, right, that's interesting. So I think it would be almost better to do that, to say, hey, here's the plan I have. And if the plan didn't go awry, you discuss that with your clients, right? Hey, okay, and here's what happened. The nutrition didn't hit like I thought it was going to hit, or I hit the number. It was rough, but I got within the range I wanted to get. Yeah. Right. And here's my build up to what I've done.
So if I don't share it ahead of time, but come back and we talk about it afterwards, does it sound like I'm making excuses because I didn't do it right? It was like, well, I had some issues. I had to back off on the bike. But then I did this, but you didn't know what my target was to begin with. If I told you my target was to begin with, and then I came back and I had to adjust, but I still stayed within my target, is that better? Like I know if I looked at a coach and I saw them race and I knew how they coached and I saw them do everything wrong or everything opposite of what they said, I would have less respect for that coach.
That's my point. Yeah.
Seeing the results wouldn't matter at that point because it's just kind of like, well, your chain fell off because you didn't take care of it. Like you didn't have your bike tuned and ready to go in. You didn't have this. You weren't prepared for everything. Yeah. And as a coach, I expect you to be more prepared for things to go wrong. Yep. And then watch you adjust for them, and whether it works or not doesn't matter.
Well, I think there's also, so I think, if you're asking my opinion, I think the fact you said, look, I'm between 110 and 120 on my swim. I got 119. There was some, it wasn't easy getting to the 119. Yeah. My bike went between X and Y. Yeah. And then, if it goes worse than I expect, it's going to be down here. Yeah. And you stay within that. Yeah. But it's sort of like golf, right? I mean, to me, it's I know this is a weird analogy, but what makes the difference between a pro and a duffer, right? Pros always make mistakes. They're in sand. They hit in rough. Yeah, yeah. They're all over the place. It's how they get out of it, right? Yeah. I mean, the wedge shots that these guys are doing, off of a rough, on just like right onto the green. Yeah, yeah. Look inhuman. Yeah. Right. Us mortals can't do that, and that's why they're cashing in the checks, right? Yeah. I think that, to your point, if I have a problem where I have cramps or other things, I combated it this way, and then it fixed it, and now I ran. Yeah. That's, to me, of course you're not going to have a perfect race. No. And of course something's going to go wrong. It's how you corrected it. I realized into myself, this is what I did. So I'm sharing that lesson with you now, clients, that, and if you noticed, I didn't have enough salt. I realized that. I corrected it, and now I'm busting an 830 on the back, 6 miles, right? Yeah. That, to me, is, I think, a much better thing to talk about than, to your point, I'm going to do a 59-minute swim, and you do a $120, and it's like,
wait a second.
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Really? Yeah.
Well, because I knew.
Well, there's a lot of people. Okay, that as a pro, as a coach, you should know that. Yeah. So, I think that's kind of the big takeaway, right? Is just maybe just be honest with your folks and
so
trust
I'll admit to everybody that sharing, even on this podcast, is difficult for me. I am really an introvert.
Yeah.
And introverts don't just hide. We actually need energy. So I like group training. I like being out at the swims. I like being all of that stuff. I get a lot of energy from everybody, and I appreciate all that energy that you give me. And then I need to go recuperate.
Yeah.
Did swim training camp, and I needed like 4 days to just like be by myself and my thoughts and get through all of that. So I'm not comfortable sharing all of this information. I'm getting over that. This is my therapy.
Yeah.
This is my end of the therapy.
Yeah, and I've been on the other end of that where I've shared, my whole journey, and then I absolutely imploded. Right. And it's not fun. Yeah. Right. You're like, oh, well, then why don't I just shut my mouth and race next time?
Yeah.
So you have to make that sort of balance. Like,
I still appreciate that sharing, even if you implode on it.
Yeah.
I would rather see that because I think we learn more from it.
Yeah.
I think we certainly learn more from it. So that's the things I'm going to try to do going forward. I don't know what races I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything else planned. I'm going to do, let's see, what is that? Gulf Coast Sprint Tri.
Nice.
Coming up in a week and a half. This should come out before that, just before that race. That'll be my 4th sprint for the year. And then I don't know what I'm doing after that. I'll do some running races. I'll figure out what next year looks like.
Have fun, kind of relax.
Yeah, we've got too many other athletes racing. Some big stuff. We got Ironman Chattanooga coming up in a month, and
that's awesome. That'll be a fun one.
There's going to be some good stuff happening there. So it's been fun. It's been a good journey.
Well, Tom, thank you for sharing. I know, like you said, it's difficult to share, but I think it's important not just as an athlete, but also as a coach, as kind of people learning, right? Yeah. People, this is the whole point of this podcast, is to kind of share information, share ways of like, hey, how can I get better? What can I do? What can I look for in a coach? What expectations of a coach should I put away versus,
hopefully it gives you some additional questions to ask when you're looking for a coach.
Yeah.
The answer to should I get a coach is always yes.
Yep.
At what level you need that coach, how much you need that coach, what you need that coach to do is different for everybody. But just asking the right questions, just don't take a coach.
Yeah.
Right. You need to make sure the personalities meld up.
Yeah.
Their philosophy, how they go through things. Yep. There's a lot of really good coaches out there.
Yep.
And it's just finding the right one for you.
Yep.
Is the key. So
cool. Thanks, Tom.
There you go. Thanks, everybody. Thumbs up, stars, subscribe. We said that at the beginning. We're going to do it again.
We'll do it again.
So next time we'll be back with the Triathlete's Journey.
Yep.
We'll be bringing some of those episodes up.
Absolutely.
And then thanks, everybody. Keep the comments coming, and we'll catch you on the next one.